I think we still beat them all. They had pitted. Some guys did gas and goes. Man, I think we got them. Unless they did tires and stuff too. I think we got them. 88-2 came back in, Ray. I didn't see what they did. He better hope I'm getting his ass. 10-4, stay calm. You got 12 coming inside, 12-18. Fat Nestor, what the hell that was? Still there. Top, way to go. Be all right. You catch him and pass him clean. You're a bigger man. You catch him and pass him clean. You're doing good. Main thing you got to do is keep that thing out of position so it don't get in trouble.
And we're back. Another episode of Last Case of Motion. We have a really special guest.
Yeah, Kim's changed a little bit.
Yeah, Kim, you look a little bit different.
Yeah. That's amazing what they can do nowadays.
Yeah, Mr. Ray Evernham, Hall of Famer, is with us. Actually, first Hall of Famer that is with us. Because when we did Jeff,
he was
not in
Hall of Fame yet.
Yeah. So this is a really special episode.
Yeah.
Kim's not going to be here to witness it.
Yeah, she's off doing.
Where is she?
She's somewhere doing some Kim things.
Yeah.
Is it Laguna? Is she going to Laguna Seca?
She is going to Laguna
now?
Seca.
I think, is she going early?
Yeah.
Because they're wrapping stuff up, right?
Well, the IndyCar Championship is coming up this weekend.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. So it's I think Pagenaud, Rossi, and Newgarden are like really, really close.
So Team Penske is looking good.
Yeah, they have a good shot, and it's double points. So I kind of like the double points. Do you ever wish you had double points back when you were crew chiefing?
I did, because coming from short track, we used to do that. You'd say, there's, either there's twin 35s or it's double points night, and you'd have a good chance to gain, especially if you were the guy behind. If you were the guy leading, you'd be a little bit sweating about it. But I used to like the double point night or special nights just to mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, we used to have that in late models, actually. With that past series, we'd sometimes do that. And yeah, like you said, it was whatever spot you were in, right? If you were leading the points, you didn't like it. If you were second or third, you loved it. But I think it's going to be an exciting IndyCar finish for sure because they're all pretty close.
Yeah. Well, and Laguna Seca, fun track. Fun track this weekend. I don't know if it was fun. It was hot.
Vegas, yeah.
Let me ask you this. I wanted to not necessarily hurt anyone, but I kept hearing it was a dry heat.
That's just people's excuses for being happy they're out of North Carolina, but it's still really hot.
Yeah. Because, even though it was a dry heat, it was hot.
It was
hot.
hot.
I can't even imagine how hot it was inside the car.
It actually isn't as bad as you think. Like when you're actually out there running, you don't think of it being hot. If your mind's thinking about how hot you are, you got a lot of other problems going on. I think you need to be focused on what your car is doing. And
do you guys still do you still weigh before and after the race to see what you lose?
I sometimes do. I don't really do it often, but I probably say 3 or 4 pounds I probably lost, which is probably a little bit more than usual for me, but it was understandable that it was unusual. But I don't have a lot to lose, so I kind of got to put that back on throughout the week. But did you guys have to weigh every week? Like the driver have to weigh every single week?
We didn't, but we had Jeff was, so fit, I could smack him for that, but he had like a 4% body fat or something. So there wasn't a lot as the race went on, there wasn't a lot of fat to burn, so he'd sweat so much or lose so much that sometimes he would cramp up. Yeah. And we started to pay attention. We were monitoring things like the carbon monoxide, but specifically his weight, and to know what kind of program to put him on before the race, so that he was getting the right minerals and everything that you sweat out. But he was about 141, 142 pounds, I think, when we first started. So he wasn't a very big guy either.
Yeah, I'm about 150. I kind of hover there. So yeah, he wasn't much.
Well, he is now. He's enjoying the TV life.
Growing up a little bit.
Every time I see him, he's at a dinner somewhere. But so
he's earned that weight.
Yeah, he stays away from the scale purposely now.
So I always wanted to ask. You were crew chief for a long time with Jeff. You were a car owner, and my days of kind of more fond of being at the racetrack when you were an owner was when Casey Kahne was driving for you, and you guys went on those tears with Dodge. And what was your favorite memory of those Casey Kahne 9 days? Because I was kind of right when I was understanding racing more and really going to the track and getting older.
Oh man, with Casey, it was just his ability to to drive the car fast again. You know, when you're with Jeff, I expected to win every week. We just expected to win every week. And then, you know, when I started my own team, we weren't winning every week. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, it was a lot cooler winning. And, you know, Bill Elliott started to have some health issues, and he didn't really want to drive anymore. Because I've always told people, like, if I'd have got Bill when he was 30 instead of 45, we'd really kicked some butt. But when Casey got there and we put him with Kenny Francis and they hit that setup, it was like every week we could win again. Yeah. And Casey would just find a way to get that thing from the front. You know, like we'd have a problem, the caution would come out at the wrong time, and we'd be a lap down, and he'd be way up to the top. And you know, when I watched Casey drive sprint cars and midgets when he was younger coming up, I was like, man, I would love to have that guy drive for me, because I love that up top and just, you know, get it done. And watching him do that at places like, you know, Texas and Michigan and California, those were the big thrills for me.
That time when you were coming into NASCAR and when Jeff Gordon was coming into NASCAR, we always talk about it. That's that shift in the era. And as someone who was, I'm a little bit older than Ryan, you know, a little bit younger than you.
I was going to say, you two guys together are probably still younger than me.
Could be. But, you know, I was growing up watching, you know, the Rainbow Warrior era. Like, that was when I was sort of paying attention to NASCAR. Now, I was a Kyle Petty in that mellow yellow car. Like, that was my guy. But
so you were a mullet and a mustache guy.
I couldn't grow it back then, but I can now. Like, that's sort of, I'm making up for lost time. But that era, it was, you talked about weighing, Jeff, and like the stuff that you guys did with the car and the stuff that you were doing that nobody else was doing. There's these significant points in NASCAR's history where there's a team or a grouping that, like the Wood brothers with pit stops, and then you guys with pit stops, and then what you were doing at the track. I don't know if the question is like, how did you think to do that? Or like, what is it about that time and that combination that made it so special?
Well, when we didn't know what we didn't know. You know, we didn't know what we were supposed to do, if you will. And, you know, if you look at where I came from, and Ryan can really attest to this, I had been Penske trained. I was in the Penske organization for 7 years through the IROC program and got to work with the IndyCar stuff and got to spend a lot of time around Mr. Penske and, you know, primarily Jay Signori, who was an amazing guy. And that whole thought process to find that advantage, you know, to keep finding advantage in your people and your cars and you know, just that push forward. So when I came to NASCAR, even though I didn't have a lot of NASCAR experience, that was all I knew. So we kept thinking, well, we can gain on a pit stop, or I've got to have my driver, you know, in shape, because we've got to help him. That's when we talked about the carbon monoxide. And I'd been around people like, you know, Rick Mears and Danny Sullivan and people that were, you know, great race drivers. And you look at just the guys that I got to work with from the IROC side, not just stock car racing, but Formula One drivers and IndyCar drivers. And, you know, I always tell everybody, look, if I hadn't learned something, you know, they should have just hit me in the head with a hammer. You know, I've been around some great people, and I think that when we took that thought process going forward and we were able to bring it over to Hendrick Motorsports, that had an incredible amount of resources that really weren't being used. So I kind of took that Penske mentality and put it together with the Hendrick resources and obviously Jeff Gordon's talent. All I had to do was make sure that we didn't screw up every week, and we had a shot to win.
It's amazing how it's, you know, it's always getting innovated, especially back then. And yeah, I mean, all the years, but it's, you could probably talk about it more, but the technology's gotten so great, you know, in the 90s, there was not a lot of the technology side of it. And now you have engineers and graphs and charts, and they can tell you what you're going to do just by looking at lines on a computer, you know, and back then I feel like you guys just had to go test it, you know, and the no testing now really hurts that, I think. But, so I know you've talked about it before, but it's my favorite story, and I'm gonna dig to try to find some information because I've always been curious about it. The T-Rex car that you said was a second faster than your
totally
primary.
Cheated up. We built the whole car out of titanium, had hidden rocket engines, and everything that you heard is all true.
I heard there were people in a room with no windows tuning on it because there was electronics on it, and he could, like, you remember the old Williams back in the days? That there was like it would tune automatically pretty much when it was out there. I heard that story. Yeah, no windows.
No, well, actually, it was built. T-Rex was kind of built in a, you know, the Hendrick R&D deal, which they gave Rex Stump like one bay and a couple of fabricators. Yeah. But true story, Mr. Hendrick got us all together one day. He said, look, we need to build something good. I want all you guys to take the ideas you have, take them to Rex and just throw them in there, and we're going to build a car. And Rex Stump, brilliant guy. His deal is really vehicle dynamics. He really understands how to make the tires and the cars and that part work. And they coupled him with Gary Aker, who built the aerodynamic wind tunnel and whatnot. And they put those two guys together, and they came up with these ideas within what the rule book was at that time. So the cage and everything was a little bit different, and the down bars, and the fact that we raised the floor pan way up, and the shocks were outside the chassis, and had really good, simple front end geometry. Really just simple stuff, right? That was just a happy car. Everything moved nice and slow and straight. And when they got the car all done, we took it to the racetrack. And it was terrible. I mean, it was like that, Terry Labonte didn't like it. Schrader didn't like it. Gordon's like, it was slower and everything. So we kept dragging it along. It's like, you've got this friend that really doesn't play ball well or does whatever, but you bring him everywhere because it's cool and you're trying to keep the boss happy. So we kept trying. And finally one day at Charlotte, we're working with the car and, over there, you go to try and test something at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're just wasting gas and tires. Yeah. So we were like, let's just get T-Rex out and drive it around. And we had Blacker with us at that time, our best car. And Jeff goes out, and he's probably 5/10 slower than Blacker. He comes in, he goes, I don't know. He said, I can't say there's nothing there, but it just doesn't go. So I said, let's try something crazy. And it was real. I said, I want to put one of my modified setups in there. And it sounds really crazy at that time, but we used to run like a 1900 or 2000 in the right front and a 12 or 13 on the left front. That was just Charlotte, right? Yeah. I was like, even up them front springs and give me the biggest sway bar we got. And I was like, let's put even rear springs in. And they're like, oh my God, you idiot! Don't tell them what's in it. So accidentally we got the car low in the front, up in the back, and kept it pretty flat. And because the floor pan and everything was raised, he goes out there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I click my stopwatch, and I'm like, it's about the same. And Brian Weitzel, who was our engineer at that time, he starts like hammering on my arm, like I'm looking at him like, what does it matter? Because I'm looking at the tenths. Well, it was a second faster. And Jeff comes in and he stops in the garage, and he's flips open his shield, and his eyes were like as big as silver dollars. He goes, what was that? and again, we did that in the Winston. That was when you used to fly in pit road and do all that. Well, he comes, we started at the back of the Winston because I'll never forget this. He comes off the track and hits pit road like 150 something. And steps back on the gas. And when he goes by us, he's got all four wheels just locked up, smoking, sliding through, and he's screaming at me, the brakes didn't work. I was like, all four wheels are locked up, bud. Just come on back around, So we started last, and then I guess the rest is history. By the time the race was over, there were people lined up at the NASCAR trailer already. But the car was not, It was largely the fact that the chassis was so stiff, the geometry was on it right, and we hit that nose down, tail up attitude. Right.
So that was. Would you say really that's the first time you've that was like this sealing off the nose?
Yeah, the nose was down. It just, we just didn't realize how much gain, because at that time it sounds crazy, right? But we used to make the right side chassis lower than the left side because we kind of sealed it off that way, and the cars had big, long doors on them, and that helped. Like our 24 cars, people are like, those things are ugly. Why they got the big doors on them? Well, we knew a little bit about side force and whatever, but when we sealed off the front of that thing and put the spoiler up in the air, man, it took off.
That's insane.
Does it ever make you feel proud that some of your legacy is that NASCAR had to change the rule book based on the things that you did?
I think it's cool at some point, but then I look at the rule book that these guys have got to deal with now, and I think it's just ridiculous. I think that some of that personality's got to be put back in the sport, like what Ryan was saying about the computer tells you this and it tells you that. Well, you got guys, like him and these other great young drivers, Chase Elliott and guys like that. They have to drive the car the way the computer says it's set up. The crew chief really can't dial the car into the way that they want to drive it. We used to be able to move wheels around like a sprint car and wheelbase, and you could change the car. And guys would run. Earnhardt and Gordon would run the same lap time, but Gordon's be fast at this part of the track, and Earnhardt would be fast at that part of the track, and we create a lot of passing. Nowadays, there's, the rules are so tight and they're doing everything for them. It doesn't give the crew chief a chance to work with his driver and bring out that personality. And I've always said they've got to find a way to put the genie back in the bottle a little bit.
Yeah. So you think they should open the rules up a little bit more?
I think that they can open up some rules.
Some, yeah.
I think that we focus too much on rules that don't matter. Like they got to figure, okay, what rules matter? What is really going to matter here? And then let's not focus on all the other stuff. I think when you move the tail of your car 20 thousandths and it makes a difference, it's time to look at how the car's designed.
Right. Yeah. You think we should, I'm on this train, but I think we should get the noses off the ground and raise them up again. I think that's the best way to help the racing, right?
I think that,
so?
Well, if you look at it, excuse me, I don't feel like the racing has been as good since they put the splitter on and dropped the noses on the ground. There's always going to be an aero push. They've had aero push since they ran on Ormond Beach. It's just the way it is, right? It's like you're going to have aero push. But I think they've got the speeds up so high, and your cars are so aerodynamically sensitive that when that goes away, you lose a lot more, where maybe we were 25% aero, 75% mechanical grip. You're probably the other way around. So when you lose that 75%, and right now the competition is so good that you can't rely. If you don't have that aero, you're not passing that guy.
Mm-hmm. So I might say it's a constantly moving target that you're trying to hit with both NASCAR and the rules, and then the teams trying to get, and then the product on the track for the fans. It's constantly moving. You mentioned Blacker earlier. Now, you guys are in season 2 of Glory Road. Last season, you had a whole show based on that car. The show Glory Road, you take a car, you take a time in the sport and sort of do a deep dive into it. I know you've restored some cars. Tell me a little bit about Glory Road and what we've got in store for season 2.
Well, I love the history of the sport. I love it. And I really feel like it's got to be captured and told. And what Glory Road does is actually tell those stories that you've probably already heard about, the Winston Millions and the Darlingtons and the races, but told by the people that were actually there. So it's not, hey, I heard this or I read this. It's I think the best stories in sports, but told by those people. And I just kind of sit there and moderate and ask some questions and let them talk. We talked about the Southern 500 and the Winston Million, the inaugural Brickyard, that Daytona 500 and stuff that Jeff had won. That car Blacker, I didn't know a lot of people would not really know about. We won like 16 or 17 races with that one car. We just used to turn it around and run it everywhere. We'd go up to the northern swing, like Pocono, Dover, Michigan. Heck, if we probably could have run the thing at Watkins Glen, but we would just run the heck out of that at that car. And there were times that car won 2 or 3 weeks in a row. And again, just telling those stories and telling about guys that have come from modifieds on up to Cup, and talking about things that actually happened, controversial finishes last week. A lot of the guys that were involved in them, and it's not just NASCAR stuff. We had Paul Tracy and Elio Castroneves, which is they're still fighting over who won that race. You probably, if you ask Elio about that at a video, he'll go, hey, he'll get them all fired up. But, those things, it's not like, hey, 10 years from now or whatever, people will read about it. We're capturing the people that were there telling those stories. And I think it's really interesting because, from Dale Earnhardt Jr. to Jeff Gordon to Larry McReynolds to Rusty Wallace and people, I'm hearing stuff that I've never heard before. And I was there for a lot of that stuff. And they're finally coming up. I'm like, I've never heard you say that. Well, it's been 20 years,
Yeah, that's really neat. I know you just had a modified special, right? With the Bodines and I think Priest was on it too. So Yeah, and Jimmy Spencer's probably mad at me because we skipped over Jimmy Spencer. But Jimmy, we didn't mean to. Don't hit me, Jimmy. But you've been in a couple of my shows already. But I got some notes from the Jimmy Spencer fans. What about Jimmy? So.
What's been one of your favorite stories that you've been able to tell with this show?
Oh wow! I'll tell you one of I think the best shows that we have is going to be coming up, and it's about endurance racing and what makes the 24-hour of Daytona, the 12-hour of Sebring, what makes those races so special that so many guys from NASCAR, from IndyCar, from all forms of racing, whether they're at the end of their career or they're just something that they want to do, what is it about that endurance racing? Because if you look at Gordon and Stewart and Jamie McMurray and Kyle and and then you look at even Rusty and a lot of Rogers guys, what is it? And then that we dig down and hear from Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt and people like that. So, that one really interests me because I feel like when we do a show that I learn a lot from, I get excited about it.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. That's here's a little bit of, we got our producer come in and bring some water in during your answer there.
Well, I had a drink and I'm thinking, man, they might have some sponsor product and I better be careful what I'm.
We'll get you covered. We're taking labels off here.
Yeah, but we do have our sponsors up. We've got our Pit Boss seasoning spices and
smokers.
Well, if we're gonna have a hamburger, I'll make sure that I grab some of that.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, like you have learned stuff you don't know about, and people always ask me, they're like, you only like NASCAR, or what do you like? I'm like, well, I'm fascinated. I think people in racing, in motorsports, are fascinated with any kind of motorsport. No matter if it's 2 wheels, 4 wheels, if it's land, air, sea. It's just neat to learn about it. I went to one of those Red Bull air races in Russia last month, and it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Just learning about how they operate and how those planes do it and their rules and things like that. And that part's really cool to me, of just learning stuff you don't know about. But at the end of the day, has some similar things, but it's just neat to learn the differences. And I wish I could drive more cars.
Well, it's just
I wish I could feel the differences. But
stay in the car. Got a roll cage, on the ground. I always tell everybody, look, I've been okay with the wheels, not so much on the land or sea. But I agree with you because you find that same path, the same thing that drives us on the racing on the 4 wheels.
Yeah.
As they travel around, the neat thing about not being on the circuit full time. Every Sunday, I'm probably not the best guy to hang out with because I want to put my crew chief hat on and I'm on the box and I don't want to listen to anybody else. It's like you're so into the race that somebody asks you a question, you're like, shut up. You're like,
Right.
And so that doesn't really go good with a marriage and kids. But just understanding what drives different forms of motorsports. I love going to sprint car races, traveling. With Aaron, we go to see the outlaw stuff, and then we'll go late models and pavement modifieds, and you just get even the vintage cars. We've gotten into this vintage racing with this HSR deal, and it's incredible because I'm gonna tell you what, these guys take these cars like these Can-Am cars and Cobras and Mustangs and Shelbys and stuff like that, and they're worth a lot of money, and they run them hard. I was like, hey, dude, that car's worth a lot of money. Give me a little bit more room when you're passing me because I'm not that good to be that close to your $1 million car.
It's nuts to me how people go out and race with the cars like that. Like hobby cars, but like $1 million cars. I'm like, what do you...
Well, I mean, does something does like a switch flip when you get behind the wheel and it's like, oh man, I got to go. I don't care what I'm in. This thing might be worth, $50 million and screw it. I want to win.
Yeah, I maybe. I don't know.
Maybe as well as I do that we race for a $5 medallion, and these guys are willing to crash their $250,000 Ferrari for that $5. You put up a trophy, and guys like him are going to get competitive.
Yeah.
I used to tell Jeff Gordon, you would run over your mother to win the race out of the yard. It doesn't matter. And he's like, no, I wouldn't run her over. I'd brush her back, but I wouldn't run her over. And that was, the guys that's what makes the great ones competitive. It doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million. They're gonna run you hard.
I know Bill Elliott's driven a little bit for you on the vintage stuff, right? Yeah,
he's killing it. Yeah. Bill's not lost a step. Yeah. He makes those poor guys cry. I mean, in 2 laps he has to stop and wait for him. He's getting a little bit out of control. He's got this vintage Dodge, old one. I think it's one of our old cars, but I'll guarantee you that if you had to chase him around like Watkins Glen or something with your new car, you'd be like, that thing. I don't think that's a vintage car. But Bill is like minutes faster than guys sometimes.
So I was there when he did that Xfinity race at Road America last year.
Yeah,
and that was really cool to see. He ended up getting tore up or something, but he did a really good job. It was pretty cool.
Did you ever get a chance to just sort of follow him around like during practice or something?
I didn't race it.
Oh, you didn't.
I spotted.
You were spot. That's right. That's right.
Cindric.
Yeah.
But we ended up blowing up. Yeah. But no, it was good. And if you guys didn't know this, Bill Elliott can rip a dirt bike.
Oh yeah.
Rip a dirt bike.
Yeah.
And snowboard.
I was gonna say, and crazy. Snowboard, and he's an incredible pilot. Like he is really. He's just one of those guys that can do just a little bit of everything. Like I said, he has not lost a step, and he's still as competitive as ever. I can tell you that.
I just have this mental image now of Bill Elliott on a snowboard.
Yeah,
that just doesn't compute. Like, I see him at Darlington, winning the Winston Million and not, shredding on a half pipe in, like Utah or something.
Yeah. So the first time I snowboarded with the Elliots, it was me and Chase and Bill and a couple other buddies. And Bill wears a full face motocross helmet with goggles when he snowboards.
Please tell me it's a Coors helmet.
No, it's just all black.
Just tell me it's a Coors helmet.
I wish I could.
Damn it.
And so we come up to this bowl, and we were out in Vail. They have a house out in Vail. And, this thing, it looks like we're standing on top of it. It looks 90 degrees straight down for probably 30, 40 feet, and then just gradually gets a little bit, less banking. He's like, you want to rip down that? I'm like, Bill, I don't know about that, man. I really don't know if I can do that. He's like, all right. And he just turned and ripped down, and before I knew it, he was 400 yards away from me. I'm like, I'll catch up to you later, Bill. But just fearless, man.
Would that be gnarly Bill?
Yeah,
instead of awesome Bill.
Yeah.
Well, how about they put you on the motorcycle thing? You talk about dirt bikes. He's good with dirt bike, but then they take the dirt bike to Colorado and pull the rear wheel and skis on it and just rip through the snow with a track thing and a ski on the front. Oh, you got to come up and ride these things. I was like, no, I'm okay walking the way I walk. I don't really want to be. Yeah,
it's like they make it a pretty much a snowmobile, but it's just one single ski in the front and the track in the back, and they are insane. Yeah, it's amazing.
Does not sound fun. Well, it sounds fun. It sounds like you said.
He would if the X Games had been around when Bill was 20, he would not have been a NASCAR racer. Right. He'd have been Travis Pastrana or something.
Yeah.
That's
definitely.
That to me is kind of crazy to think that if these these extreme sports had been around, would a guy like Jeff Gordon, would a guy like Bill Elliott have gone down that road?
I don't know. Jeff Gordon. People ask me that a lot. I don't know that Jeff is as big a daredevil. Jeff's really, really calculating. Now, Jeff was really good water skier. I don't know if a lot of people know, but he was incredible water skier, and he almost went in that direction. But with racing, Jeff's always been, really his sequential thought process and things like that have again always kept him going. And with Bill, it was a little bit different. Bill was actually a little bit more laid back and fun sometimes, and because Bill would be running. He'd be like 3 and 4 wide at Daytona, and he would just come over the radio and start singing, clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am stuck in the middle. I was like, please pay attention, and things like that. But Bill could change that focus, immediately. I tell everybody, I'm very fortunate, got to work with 2 of the greatest drivers, with Jeff Gordon and with Bill Elliott. I could take a quarter and go out and lay it on the track at Daytona, and both of those guys could find that quarter and hit it. Okay, but Bill could tell you if it was heads or tails. Jeff would pick it up and reinvest it. You know what I mean? It's just 2 different personalities.
Right. Before we got the show started, we always start the show off with in-car audio and some of the best bits. And as we're recording this, I had a late flight, so I didn't quite get a chance to go to the office and get the sound, so I haven't quite decided what I'm putting in there yet, so it'll be a surprise for all the fans and us.
Is it 93, 94?
It might be some early...
Be a lot of beeps, a lot of beeps in that one. As I was telling you before, no kidding, they actually, at that time, Max Helton, who was the preacher from the MRO, actually had to come and sit Jeff and I down about our language on the radio, and so we hopefully we cleaned that up and we won't be going straight to hell, but we were on our way in 93, 94.
It's easy to get fired up, man.
Yeah.
I get fired up on the radio and don't really get fired up in person. I know you and Jeff, pretty laid back people in person. You get a helmet on, you get a headset on, man. Demeanor changes when you're doing something. You get fiery spirit, something you're passionate about.
Did see a little fiery spirit out of Kyle Busch at the end of the race. Did you watch any of his post-race comments? Channeling his inner Marshawn Lynch.
I did. I saw that. Yeah. He was upset.
Yeah. He's always upset.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He had a right. I don't know. I wasn't in the position he was in. So
no, there was some interesting feedback on social media from some of the drivers that he was around that said, "Hey, basically, come race in one of these cars." When we had this discussion in the airport yesterday while we were on our delay, is there any way that you could ever take, say, the field and basically invert the field so all of the fastest guys have to drive the cars that are in the back of the pack? and the guys in the back of the pack get in the guys' cars up there. Could you ever?
No, that would never happen. Between owners,
using your imagination, and finding a way.
Yeah, I mean, you want to run an IROC series? I thought the IROC series was great.
Isn't that what you're going to be doing a couple of years?
Yeah, probably 2 years. Yeah, pretty much an IROC series. We're going to be.
That'll cost. Now I'll get it. That'll cost me probably.
Yeah,
but like speaking, you
I'm just reading off the script.
Yeah,
the competition level in NASCAR now, like the number of drivers that are in the field, and then the skill level of the drivers in the field. Mm-hmm. If all things being even, would those guys in the back still be able to compete? Like you're seeing right now, Di Benedetto doing good work in.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think everybody that races, not even professionally. I know some great late model guys out there, great modified racers, sprint car drivers. I mean, that's professional racing, but the NASCAR stuff, a lot of great race car drivers. So, and I think, you put, and Matt's shown it over his career for sure. And I think, some other guys who are not fortunate to be in, great stuff, I think they could do very well if they were. It's just hard to get those opportunities, and you got to make the most of what you can do right now. And I feel like, what people get upset about, drivers in particular with, cars that are a little bit slower is kind of the inconsistency of where they run on the racetrack. As far as, if you're going to run top, middle, bottom, like, one time you pass them, they'll be middle, and then next lap they'll be bottom, or they vary lap to lap, and you're watching them, for 4 or 5 laps as you're running them down, and you're just kind of guessing. I feel like if there was a little bit better understanding of where they were going to be, you wouldn't really have people as upset like Kyle was, I guess. And Kyle, people say Kyle could have just turned left or right and missed him. I'm like, you can't really do that. You're kind of committed to where you're going, But I don't know. I mean, it's a tough deal.
I think he's being a little bit modest, so I can speak to that because there are, as with any sport, I don't care whether it's football or baseball or basketball, whatever, there are people that are special, and you notice those things. And the people that are special and they're consistent end up with the better rides. And again, anyone who's out there is doing obviously something that I can't do, right? But there's anybody who's out there playing NFL or as a quarterback, not everybody's Tom Brady, right? So there are people who are special. And when you were talking about the lane changing and things, part of what people watch, even if you're not in a good car, what people watch Matt DiBenedetto, he's very aware of his surroundings no matter what he's driving. Ross Chastain, very aware of his surroundings. And sometimes, it would be a guy like me, I'd be going around there just trying not to hit anything, so I'd be all over the place. Right. But, to say you could take a guy without the kind of experience of driving a good car or that has that natural ability, no different than you would take a guy who's maybe a good average quarterback. Could he lead a Super Bowl team? Probably not. So those guys could do better. They've got to get experience. It's a big part of it. But I've always said, and again, this goes back to my IROC days and my, the time that I got to work with those guys. There's some people in this sport that are just special, and that's it. And as I said, no different than basketball or football or baseball or any other sport.
In those other sports, we talk about coaching trees and we talk about legacy. And if you look back at the guys that have been on your team when you were with the Rainbow Warriors and where they are in the sport right now, I mean, how many Hall of Famers do you think are on that team? Like,
I don't know. Chad kind of pisses me off. I taught him everything. He just breaks all my records. Man, he just bumped me out of the way. No, I mean, I'm proud of that, and I'm proud, with guys like Kenny Francis and Rodney Childers and guys that came on a little bit later. But I think that's it makes me feel really good. But then I feel like I owed that to the people who taught me, right. the Jay Signoris, and I lived at Banjo Matthews for a while with he and his wife, and just stayed at his shop and bugged the man. And I bugged the man 24 hours a day. And guys like Harry Hyde and Robert G. and people like that. Like, I asked so many questions, they just they didn't want to hang around with me because I just asked too many questions. But I think that. All of the people that taught me something from the days that I was running the 6-cylinder cars on up to here, the best way I could pay them back is to try and pass that knowledge. And it makes you feel so good when somebody takes what you taught them and then improves on it and does better, it's an awesome feeling. Every time I watch some of the guys that came through, and some of them, again, Chad came in as a body shop assistant, slept in his car to try and meet me to get a job, but he was always up 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, did his workout for his pit crew stuff, came in, and, again, no different than some drivers are special. Some of those crew guys are special, too, that make that commitment.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about this. During the race Saturday, we got the news about Mike Stefanik, and you're a Northeast guy. We asked Martin Truex Jr. in Victory Lane, his thoughts about it. Can you put into words what he meant to the sport? And I mean, he's a 9-time champion, 7 in the modifieds. Like, that 7 number is that in NASCAR, that is a big number.
Yeah. That's a hard one because Mike was one of those guys that didn't go to Cup. He didn't go to be, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson. He didn't go on to do those things. But to other racers, I got to race with Mike, and I've knew Mike for a long time, and Julie Casella and Sonny Casella, all the people that were involved up there. And I'm going to tell you, Mike was one of the toughest, most fierce racers that you would ever be around because he could build the car, he could set it up, and he could drive the wheels off of it. He was one of those guys that were special, and he didn't, he wasn't one of those guys that used you up on the racetrack. I mean, he'd give you a bump here and there, but he just was good. I can't say that I raced NASCAR modifieds with him because he was so much faster than me in the NASCAR modified. Where I got to race with Mike was when they started Dirt Asphalt Series, and it was kind of new to everybody, and we were running Nazareth and Flemington and places like that. And Mike and I had a heck of a race one day at Nazareth on the mile for actually Doug Hoffman was leading, and Mike and I were battling for second, and we did it for about 100 miles. And it was, I look back at that, and when I heard that he had passed away on Sunday, I thought, you thank God for the opportunity to get to race that, but you also hope that somehow people would get to know this guy, this quiet guy from Massachusetts, how fierce of a competitor he was and how smart. I'm fortunate because I own the modified that Mike won a lot of those championships in, the X6 car, and that car was built, I think, in 97 or 98, and you can't believe how technically advanced it is for what it was back then. So it's special, but nobody knows when your number is going to be called, and when you do, you just, for a guy like Mike, I hope that people will dig down and try and really understand like what this guy accomplished. 7 championships in the modified, 2 in the Busch NASCAR North, but he did those at the same time. There were 2 years in a row he was modified champion and Busch North champion, and that's, I think, the first time in NASCAR anybody's been able to do that 2 years in a row. I think Lee Petty did it once, 1 year in a row. Mike did it 2 years in a row. So 9 total championships. On the Hall of Fame ballot, certainly deserves to be in there.
I would imagine. I know it was close this past time, but I would imagine he will definitely be in the Hall of Fame class, if not this coming year, the next year. But
yeah, we hope so.
Yeah,
I think he will.
Like I said, that number 9. Total championships and just 7. When you hear about the names that have 7 championships across all of NASCAR series, that is rare air.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how many of those, but the majority of those in cars he built.
Yeah.
Which impresses the heck out of me.
Yeah.
Because I can build a good car, but I haven't had a lot of luck as a driver. I got to be a good car builder because I wasn't a very good driver and I was fixing stuff all the time. But one of those guys that could build it, drive it to the point to where you're beating everything. That's always been super impressive to me. Your grandfather was like that.
Yeah, he was growing up when he was running modifieds and a little bit of sprint cars, through the 60s and 70s, and that's they build their own stuff
and win a lot with it.
They had actually this. You ever heard of the Travis Kraft?
Yeah.
He had one of their first cars, and I think. Me and my dad actually found one of his cars from, I think, the early 70s, and we got to restore it. But you have to come by and see it. But it's at my dad's race shop in Salisbury. But no, it's that's what they did. You build all your own stuff and kind of just work on it yourself. Go take it to the racetrack and then do it again. And running dirt, you run 3-4 nights a week. So you're constantly kind of maintenance and upkeep and trying new things. And that's just kind of how they did it, which I think is a really neat way to do it.
It's always difficult to transition away from something like that, but just want to say that our thoughts and positive vibes going out to the Stefanik family. We are going to Richmond this weekend.
Yeah. Second race, the first round. Yeah.
Under the lights Saturday night.
Yeah.
I know that's a track that you love.
I love it. Yeah. It's not been, it's been our Achilles heel, man, to be honest with you. I don't know why. We made our first ever NASCAR start there in 12 with Tommy Baldwin.
Yeah. And did a good job there.
We ran
that
seventh.
Night. Yeah.
Yeah, we ran really, really good. We probably could have run top 5, and we'd lose about 6 spots every pit stop. But it was that was best run, and ever since then, I cannot figure it out.
You still got that set up?
I need to text Tommy and ask him, hey man, mine get thrown at my way. But yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating when you don't run good somewhere. You try something different every time you go back, from setting the car up different to driving different, trying new things, and now you have so much. You can learn from. You can look at data and other drivers, and you can try to mimic. I've never been very good at mimicking other drivers, though. That's hard to do. That's changing your whole style up for somewhere, and it helps a little bit, but it's hard to do. But yeah, that's something we got to have a good run there to really be in a good shape going into the Roval. So we'll see.
This show has been a good run. If I did it right, I didn't do it right.
No.
The music should be playing. There should be music going on right now that's playing us out.
What kind of music are you playing?
It's sort of like it's classical jazz.
Okay.
Like free form jazz.
Yeah.
No, it's driving rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I was actually being nice when I was going, oh, okay.
It's just a bass layer, right? 'Cause
Right.
We can't play actual songs on here.
Well, no, we can play this song because it's in our music library back at
That's
NASCAR.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's one of those APM
Yeah.
music songs. We pay a license for it.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you, Ray, for joining us today. This has been a slight departure from how our show normally goes.
Yeah, I
but
was hoping I was going to get to talk about some of the things,
Well, we didn't.
like spy pipigeons and Area 51 and Welsh toilets, and I'm like, I studied on that so hard.
We start geeking out, though. Like,
Well, I didn't. So actually,
studied,
it was
man.
funny. Like before this morning, in our group chat, they sent me a link to this thing, and it was about some bikers and
Stuff.
doing bad stuff. And I was like, maybe we should slow play that for Ray. I don't know. I want to actually talk about some racing stuff with you, and I didn't know how you're going to take the other stuff. So wanted to keep
No,
it,
hey,
keep it going.
I enjoy the race talk, and you guys have fun, and I think it's important to have fun and do it. But going back to that, what you just said about not being able to adjust the car for you.
Yeah.
Talk to the powers that be, because going forward, driver personality is what drove this sport. And as that personality is part of how you want to drive a car.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a bigger toolbox. Your crew chief needs a bigger toolbox to make sure that car is fast where you want it to be, not that Ryan Blaney has to be fast where the computer says you should be.
Right.
and on that bombshell,
there.
that is what we need to.
We're going to
boom.
save that audio clip and send it right to
Thank you for watching or listening, and rate and review on iTunes.
Thanks, everybody.